Hey, you made it. You're here. Thank you. It means the world. This is my part 2 of my conversation with Sajan, where I really focused. I had a few questions and kind of wanted to focus on his perspective, how he makes music, the things he wished he would have known thus far in his life, and the areas he's grown in and things he's learned that I think are really valuable. If you're a creator in any space and you create, I think it's worth listening to. You might get something. Anyways, check it out. See what you think. Is there anything that you wish you would have known? Like, that are actually helpful things to you, whether it's tips or practical things or just how you go about thinking about it, like a few things you'd wish, like, man, I wish I would have known that. Not even if it was like to not overthink something.
Yeah, that's like a huge point. No, and I'm glad that you said that, because I think not overthinking things is like huge. I spend a lot of time overthinking things. I think it's very like there's just a point where it's like if it vibes, it vibes. If it's good, it's good.
So
you don't need to and all the best artists and producers and stuff in the world will say that. Like, wow. If it's good, it's good. You don't need to like try to, change something. Like, if it's not broken, don't fix it. You can always make things better, but like overthinking stuff, I think I'm just saying there's been so many times when I have like had an idea and then I overthought it like way too much and then it just sucked. And like
the song with me.
Yeah, and it's like way better if you just like, if it's good, then let it be good and let it be the thing. That's has a lot to do with like even how I create. Like I try to get a vibe for something first, which I know that's not very descriptive, but it's like,
no, that's great.
I just try to get like a feeling, whether that's like just messing around with like sounds or messing around with instruments until I try to get inspired first. If you can get to the place of inspiration, everything else will flow. And instead of just trying to like fit little pieces together, like for me, at least in my experience, it's been like the best songs have come from when I like get something that's really inspiring, whether that's a sound, whether it's a hook, whether it's whatever that is. I think the hardest part, like I would work the hardest at getting inspired, because everything else is, everything else comes super easy after that. Instead of like, I would argue that for an artist, the hardest work is being inspired.
Wow.
And then the rest of that stuff, because that stuff is always like around. It comes from your life experiences and like what you go through and things like that. And I think like getting inspired is just going to spur on all those other things like melodies and things like that. That's why like a lot of times when I work, I'll just like rarely, sometimes it happens this way, but like rarely do I just sit down and write a song.
Right.
Like even if I do sit down with the guitar, I'm just going to be messy. Like all the songs come from like something like, oh, like you played something on accident or whatever. And then you're like, oh, that sounded sick. What if it was in this context? Or just sit down at the keyboard on the computer and just mess with synths or make some really crazy sound and just like do something until something catches your ear.
Wow. And
kind of just like mess with that until it's like you really get into like a space and really get into like a feeling and get inspired. And then because once you get inspired, the vision for the whole song opens up and then it's like, okay, now I can do it. And almost every song I've made has come from that.
Wow.
And then, just not being afraid to try stuff, I think. Not being afraid to be different.
Oh my gosh.
Because like that's the only way we're going to push things and innovate, I think so.
Yep. Well, I know that even just in a little bit of working with you, making music or watching you and all that kind of stuff, not being afraid is so challenging because it goes back to what I said earlier. It's a failure piece. Mm-hmm. It's like, well, I don't want to step outside of my box because there's a box that I'm looking at, aka on Spotify or Apple Music or whatever, that's clearly there.
Yeah.
But in my opinion, most of those people who got into that box or whatever did it because of what you just said. Mm-hmm. They're like, well, I don't care. I'm just gonna do this and not be safe and get in those spaces, be inspired. Because even when I remember, like it was probably a year ago, we were doing some stuff, and it was a sound you clicked on, and I was like, bro, this sounds like it was blowing my mind. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, like you're saying, I was like all of the creativity just started oozing out. Mm-hmm. And all the hard work was just created by the sound you'd found.
Yeah, it's just finding, it's doing the work to get inspired.
It's mind blowing because I've spent so much of my life, or I know a lot of people that have been like, okay, like here, do these 12 steps, do these 12 things, and maybe it works. And I think you could argue the point that it might work for people that are just making music to solely make money. And they don't care about like the heart of it and who they are and like what's being conveyed.
Yeah.
Sure, you can write a catchy hook.
Yeah.
But I think everyone, it's so obvious, especially in the world we live in now, honesty and being true to who you are is everything. Is the ultimate currency.
I would agree. It's never gonna, because you can't replace that. There's like, and there's nothing wrong with writing catchy hooks, and some people are like just ridiculously talented at writing catchy hooks, which is amazing. But like,
can we hang out sometime?
It's like, you know, you want to have both. And then I also think like not putting, like we talked about expectations, like not putting expectations that everything has to be amazing.
Wow.
Because you're not, I mean, like it's so, at least for me, and I know for a lot of other creatives, it's so easy to have this like flip-flopping, like I'm amazing, and then you're like I suck, and like, you know, living in somewhere in between the tension of like being, you know, crippled by feeling like you are awful, and then being like, you know, too arrogant or whatever. I don't know. It's just like, I don't know. It's so easy to live in that spot of being like, I am the best artist that has ever lived, and then being like, I should give up all of my art forever.
Should go work at a coffee shop for the rest of my life.
You know, it's like, but like not having, for me, I'm trying to work on too, like not having any expectation of like everything that I make has to be the best thing ever.
Wow.
Like, because sometimes, I'm pretty sure John Mayer said it, but he's like, just write a bad song. Like, just write a song. Like, It doesn't matter if it's bad. Just write things. Just make things. Like,
that's so good.
Because like all of the, even I heard another producer say, he's like, yeah, like he makes hits, and he's like all of the like big producers, they make hits, but they made like probably 50 songs before that, and then the one that was a hit is the one that everyone heard, and then they get a hit every once in a while, but like it's not like every single thing that they touch is like the best thing ever.
Wow.
They're just persistent and keep making stuff.
Which I think is so helpful, because in my head, you just assume that these people are just machines that
Yeah,
pump out
just
hit
like-
after hit after hit.
Yeah, and it's like, no, they probably made like 30 songs, and then they chose like 3 of them that were the ones that you know.
Wow.
But
That's amazing, man. Okay, well, last question, and then we'll wrap this thing up. My last question is, and this is for some people maybe not, but where do you feel like you see music going in the near future?
music. My music or music in general?
Music in general. And you can add on your stuff if you want at the end.
It's interesting because it's like, I know we've talked about this a lot, but like there's so much music now. Mm-hmm. There's so much information, and music, I mean, with that has risen. Like I saw some stat like the music intake is at an all-time high, and
Wow.
I mean, and the payouts are at an all-time like low.
Right.
Or not all-time low, but they're, I mean, in the history of music, they're
Like the
pretty low.
lowest.
And but people are listening to music more than they ever have, and so I think, like you had mentioned earlier, like I think that music is going to it's always, to me, music will always be impactful. There's never going to be a time where people don't want to listen to music or don't want to intake art, which is the weird paradoxical thing about art to me, is that like I feel like we don't value it, but we also like, but we do though. Like we don't
Right.
we don't want to like give resources towards
Right.
it, but there's like people always, there's never been a generation that just doesn't like art. Everybody
Wow.
takes art in. Everybody is like changed or moved by art in some way, but so I think that's why what I think you said about like being authentic and being honest is way more important than being relevant, because like we're in this fight, especially in music, to just like continually be on the cutting edge of relevance and having this appearance or this image of whatever, to cut that as a tool to cut through the noise, because
Wow.
there's 100 million other artists that are trying to get, you know, their stuff out there. But I think that people can't argue with like authenticity, so I think it's actually going to push people towards authenticity and push people towards what is like really you know, the heart behind music, instead of just like there's going to be all sorts. I think there's going to be all sorts of people in music that are just trying to make money, which is fine. Any industry will have that.
Right.
But I also think that like the music that is truly authentic will stand out. It'll shine even brighter. I think it's going to stand out even more, because when that becomes a distinguishing factor, like that's how you have to make it now, is like you have to write really good, meaningful songs.
Right.
You know, because eventually it's just going to stand. That's the only thing that's going to stand out from the noise, I think.
Wow.
And yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, I just think it's a bright future. It's weird too. I mean, the industry is in a very odd place.
Right.
So I don't know. I don't know what it's gonna look like, but I'm hopeful.
That's super cool, man.
Yeah, man.
Well, thank you so much for coming and doing this. I greatly appreciate it. And for everyone else out there, I will go ahead and leave all the links to his social media, every way you can track him and be super creepy. Just kidding, don't do that. And all of his music, all that kind of stuff. The amount of time I've spent making edits and doing the same thing over and over and over and over and over. It's actually not that bad, surprisingly. You would think it's bad, but it's not really. Hit me up in the comments down below. Let me know what you thought about our talk, what you'd like to see, things you'd like to hear about, topics, conversations, all of the above. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.